CNBC, a second round of $1,200 stimulus checks could be coming. Here's how soon you can expect them. The headlines say congressional lawmakers want to include a second round of stimulus checks. In the next CV bill, the size of the payments is still subject to change, but could be similar to the terms of the $1,200 payments sent in the first batch. This time, some Americans should receive their payments quicker, but questions linger for those who are waiting for their first checks. Congress won't move on the next round of stimulus legislation this week, meaning the week that had just ended. Despite that, however, a second set of stimulus checks is still on the table. Draft legislation released by Senate Republicans states these will be included, but the amount of the payment and eligibility are TBA, to be announced. Like we didn't know what TBA meant, right? Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said this week that the size and scope of the payments will likely be the same as the first round. That is subject to change as negotiations with Democrats ensue. Those checks were up to $1,200 per individual or $2,400 per married couple, plus $500 for dependents under 17. Eligibility was based on income. We'll skip that paragraph. You all know, you can see it there. A second set of payments would be a concession for some Republicans who are reluctant to send more money. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell previously suggested lowering the income threshold to those making $40,000 or less. You would think that Democrats would be on board with that because they're always talking about how they're for the little guy and the poor people. The stimulus checks are part of Donald Trump's plan to get relief help to Americans quickly, Mnuchin said in a Thursday CNBC interview. While the president still likes the idea of a payroll tax cut, more direct payments would get money to people sooner. The president's preference is to make sure that we send out direct payments quickly so that in August people get more money. And I heard Mnuchin say, I believe it was on Friday, that the payroll tax cut was off the table. Just logistically, they wouldn't have time to work on that, kind of work the kinks out. The timing of the money will depend first on how quickly negotiations on Capitol Hill are finalized, which we know they love to go quickly on those. Congress passed the CARES Act, which authorized the first round of cash late in March. The Treasury and IRS subsequently began sending out checks in mid-April. Those who were first in line for those payments had their direct deposit information on file with the IRS via their 2018 or 2019 tax return. I think for the missus and I believe it was about 2 weeks. I don't think it went into the third week, but after it was announced, I believe 2 weeks was when we saw ours. Some people could receive money sooner the second time around. It may be a much quicker way to get relief and support now than it was originally, said Garrett Watson, senior policy analyst at the Tax Foundation. In particular, those who are receiving direct payments from the U.S. government, such as Social Security, supplemental security income, or Veterans Affairs benefits, could get their money sooner, thanks to efforts with the first round to get data on those recipients. Watson said, hey, makes sense, right? Who may have to wait? Admittedly, some people have never received their checks from the first round, which could put them in limbo while waiting for the new help. Lawmakers asked Mnuchin about those missing checks at a recent hearing. Mnuchin called it inexcusable. I am sympathetic because these are real people who want their checks, Mnuchin said. Though the government is aware of these issues, some people could still be in for a long wait for their money, Watson said. And if you are one of those individuals, then you need to write your representative ASAP, because that's one of the things that I think or would think that they could help you with. So all of those individuals that are waiting, find out who your congressperson is and get on it. Put them to work, all right? Make them do something. One last paragraph here. It says how eligibility could change. A second wave of checks will be an opportunity for the government to extend the money to some people who were shut out of the previous round. One such group that both sides of the aisle agree should be included are adult dependents, including college students and people with disabilities. Senator Marco Rubio, Florida, has advocated for Americans who are married to non-citizens to be included, though it is not clear if that change will be added to the final measure. In a related move, the Senate passed a bill on Thursday to prevent stimulus checks from getting garnished by private debt collectors for unpaid debts. I remember that was a huge thing the first time around. The measure would also need to be approved by the House. Something interesting, and why I wanted to take a look at that last paragraph and kind of read that out for everybody, just kind of throwing some things out there, but adult dependents. We're talking about the part right here where they're agreeing that adult dependents, including college students and people with disabilities, should be able to get money this round, but maybe I'm not understanding this correctly. Actually, you know what? I get it. Now I get it. They said originally the dependents had to be under 17. So that could include obviously individuals with disabilities, but adult dependents specifically, when you're talking about, say, your disabled son or daughter who's 24, or your college student who is 25 and still living at the house for whatever reason, you need to get out already. It's time to go. Time for mommy and daddy to send you on your way. We're having some fun with it, of course. But if those individuals really were excluded, and again, just trying to work through this here on the fly, I don't know how they could have been excluded if they had income, right? So say there's a college student who's 25. She's an adult, living at home. That's why she's claimed as a dependent. She had income to where she would have filed a return, but would have been claimed under the parents. So is it my understanding that they would have got the $500 for her, or no, because she's over 17? On the other hand, though, an individual with a disability, say a 25-year-old who has autism and may or may not work, wouldn't the understanding be that they would have to have earned some kind of income? The parents can claim them as a dependent, of course, but they would have had to have earned income to be eligible, right? They would have had to file a tax return to be eligible. That's my understanding is right, correct on that? So is that correct? Am I seeing that right? Or are they trying to say that if there's college students and people with disabilities who weren't working, disability, obviously you're getting SSD, how is it that you could not be working but still get something, right? So it's not necessarily an income thing, because again, just kind of working through this, it's not necessarily an income thing that they're focused on. It's just trying to get money in the form of a stimulus into as many people's hands as possible. Oh, goodness. Thanks for bearing with me on that. Like I said, just working through that on the fly. I mean, I guess in a way that makes sense, but realistically, though, I would say this. If you are a college student, adult, who's claimed as a dependent by your parents, assuming you haven't worked, should you really be eligible for the money? People with disabilities, obviously that's something else, even if they're getting a check from the government every month. I love to give a lot more leeway to individuals with disabilities relative to a adult college student who's just living at home with their parents. But we'll see what the final thing looks like. It looks like probably individuals are going to be looking at $1,200 again. I don't know that they're going to be able to lower the income threshold. That's kind of a hard thing to do once you get people used to something. Although I wouldn't necessarily be against lowering it, maybe lowering it to $50,000 and then $100,000 in order to get the max amount for a couple. Something like that I'd be in favor of. We'll see how things proceed, and we'll see how quickly they can get this thing done. But thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for hanging in there with me while I was working that stuff out. All right, take it easy, everybody.